Okay guys, welcome back. Welcome back to our guest.
Thank you, it's always good
Chris
to be here.
Voshall, back up to see us again. Means only one thing, we've got new product to talk about.
Absolutely, I love coming up to see you guys and talk about my favorite thing is new irons, new products, and it's always good to get you guys on the front end of it and let you know and try to educate everybody on the new MP-20 line.
Without a doubt, and this is really exciting, you know, a fall launch. We love a fall launch, you know, in here. Some new irons to get excited about. We've kind of had the new product for 2019 for several months now, and we've kind of been working our way through it. And then we get sort of, you know, re-energized again with new product. And this has been something that's been coming. It's been in the pipeline. I love the campaign that led towards this.
Right.
The way it was released in stages, and I thought that was really cool. Talking to, you know, obviously what we are going to talk about today, the layering and the copper and bringing that back. The little image that was released of the copper, and everyone went, wow, is that what the iron's going to look like and stuff? So I loved all of that stuff. So we have 4 new irons.
Yes.
3 on the righty side, and we've got 1 on the lefty, the special edition lefty.
Correct.
Why don't we just start right at the very top? Talk to us about the transition between or from MP-18 into 20.
Absolutely. So with this new line, we took a lot of things we learned from MP-18, but then we tried to see where was it lacking and what could we do better on the fitting side of the world. So with the MP-18, it was really the first time where we designed, we'll call it 3.5 sets of irons between the MP-18, the SC, the MMC, and then the Fly Highs, which were just long irons. But the design strategy we took with those is how can we mix and match to make them almost one set, just with a number of different options, meaning, you know, muscle backs in the short irons, cavity backs in the mid irons, Fly Highs in the long irons. How can we mix and match those? What we learned from that set is, you know, and what you guys do best is custom fit and blend the perfect set. But what it was missing was variance in trajectory. So between an MP-18 muscle back and an SC, there was a forgiveness difference and a slight size difference. However, you know, if you look at the data and you hit a pure shot with both, they delivered pretty similar results. CG location was similar, turf interaction was similar. It's just a forgiveness tweak. So that was one of the big opportunities we saw with MP-20. Was how can we take that added forgiveness, but also play a trajectory card in it as well. So between the MP-20, the MP-20 MMC, and the MP-20 HMB, now you'll see 3 unique trajectories as well. Very
cool. Sort of progression and transition of profile. I love what's went on here, and you know, the first time I was, have to say, like, I was most curious about HMB. Because you know, I'd seen, obviously we know what to expect from the blade. We have a prior generation of MMC to go on, so we have expectations as to what's going to be sort of made in the refinements of that. HMB, I didn't know what to expect. A part of the industry in sort of iron market that's exploded in these hollow body, sort of almost player's distance category. So tell us a little bit about how kind of Mizuno got into that side of things.
So HMB is, to your point, it's the exciting one for us. It's the brand new one. It's the one that's completely unique from what we've done before. HMB standing for hot metal blade. You know, originally when we were talking about it, is it hybrid muscle back, hollow muscle back? We went back and forth, but ultimately we landed on hot metal blade because of some of the technologies behind it. What we wanted to do, because it is in our MP-20 line, it has to look the part. It has to have that thin, sleek look at a dress, narrow sole, very clean from behind. So you could blend it with any of the other MP models, but at the same time, you need performance out of this. So what we have and why we call it the hot metal blade is because we forged the face and neck out of our chromoly material. Chromoly is the same material that we had in our JPX 919 Hot Metal and Hot Metal Pro, which are 2 of our best-selling irons ever. The material's really exciting because it allows us to go thin on the face, and it also allows us to get great feel because we can grain flow forge it now. By grain flow forging it, you get that soft feel, you get the long continuous grains from the hosel all the way to the face. And we're actually forging the face and neck, which a lot of these hollow body irons out there, they'll say forged on them, but it's back pieces forged, and you know, it's usually not where you hit the ball. So with Mizuno, we truly believe you got to have the forging on the part where you're hitting it. So that's where you can get the benefit. Then we go back and we add a back piece that's a stainless steel back piece with 2 tungsten weights on the toe and heel, ultimately delivering a club that in the bag, it's tough to distinguish it from a muscle back, But on the launch monitor,
100%.
it's significantly different than a muscle back.
When I saw the heads and our heads arrived and we were getting ready to put them into our matrix, I saw them sitting on the table and I literally couldn't distinguish the blade from the HMB.
Right.
They literally looked, exactly the same. Then you kind of pick them up and you size them up, and I thought there would be, to be honest, quite a bigger transition. I thought the HMB would be a little bit bigger, but it really isn't. It has such a clean look to it. Which must have been a real challenge from an R&D and design perspective.
You're totally right about that. There's always the I guess the urge to, from the engineering side, make a club bigger. When you make it bigger, CG is easier to make super deep. When you make something bigger, it's easier to get a larger moment of inertia. But with Mizuno, kind of our place in the market, why we are who we are, is our players' look and that clean look at a dress. So that was the big challenge we undertook, was how can you get as much performance out of as possible on a club that looks the part. It looks like a muscle back, it's virtually indistinguishable. So that was the big challenge of, we got to make sure by using multiple materials, by pulling tungsten weights, pull it back, by using a chromoly where we could go very thin on the face for weight savings, can we get a deep enough center of gravity to execute the performance we wanted from this hollow design, even though the sole's not super wide or the top line's not super thick.
I had a little look at the 2-iron when you guys came on in with the samples, and the 2-iron it's still pretty. I mean, you gotta, if you're going to be the guy who selects that club, you're going to have to be a ball striker.
Right.
It's not big by any means, so it kind of has definitely that player profile. But obviously, the technology and stability and ball speed and all that explosiveness built into it where you want it in that particular club.
It plays bigger than it looks, is what I'll say.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, because I know just from behind, there was always that talk. It's funny, if you take a look back at some of the clubs, some of the hollow clubs we've done in the past, there's always been that little bit of, does it look as forgiving enough to get people to try it? Right. So if you look at like our MP-5, MP-4, some of those clubs in the past, we've had hollow body designs, but we've actually gone back and put cavities on hollow bodies, which in reality, it doesn't do anything. It kind of actually hurts it because that's moving more mass forward in the blade, where on a hollow body, you want to bring the mass back as far as possible. Right. But the perception is this forgiving enough? This time we truly, we're a little bit braver and made it look truly like the muscle back. So there's a ton of performance in it, even though it looks very, very clean. Yeah,
it really does. So going on to MMC, how did this generation differ from last year or last edition? Yeah,
so MMC is a construction that we're super excited about because it's a club that Mizuno, we feel like we're the only ones in the world that can make this type of construction. Right. So it's a titanium muscle forged directly into a stainless steel head. The cool technology behind that is by utilizing the contraction rates of those two materials, you can forge the titanium in and the steel contracts more than titanium contracts, so it mechanically locks it into place. I talked about feel on the HMB. When you mechanically lock it in place, you don't disrupt the grains by doing a welding technique or any sort of gluing or something like that. So you can still maintain the grain integrity for the GrainFlow Forge HD feel for those long continuous grains. And because the titanium is lighter, less dense, you can move mass around. So what's cool is it's a construction that we've used for a number of years, but what we did this year to change things around is we actually put different pieces of titanium in different heads throughout the set. In the past, it had always been one piece of titanium, whether you're talking about the 4-iron or the pitching wedge. The struggle with that is, and I'll kind of use this head as a little bit of an example to kind of demonstrate something, when you forge it in and you press the titanium in, when you have not too much loft like a 4-iron, you've got a lot of access to the back of the blade. So you can put that very low. When you get a pitching wedge where the loft increases significantly, it changes the tilt. So all of a sudden a forging mold's not going to go in as cleanly. So it required a lot of mass, extra mass around the perimeter to forge that in. The downfall of that is you got short irons that were relatively wide and long irons that were relatively narrow. That was kind of not ideal because you want your long irons to launch high and your short irons to launch low. So by investing in extra tooling molds, we actually put unique pieces of titanium between the long irons and the short irons. So now you've got a much better flow throughout the set. Long iron's going to fly higher, short iron's going to fly lower, but you get all that forgiveness.
And that kind of takes me into obviously MP-20, into the blade. Before we go into the layering, and obviously that's a big story. Let's talk a little bit about sort of sort of the vertical stability of that product.
Yes.
Right. The change of CG and that sort of what went into that.
Yes.
Because I think as we talk about, long irons progressing into shorter irons, sort of the vertical change of the CG plays a big role in that.
It does. You're right about that. So, when you look at a muscle back from behind, you don't see a lot of technology, but there's some, I wouldn't say hidden, because you can see it once it's pointed out. But on the MP-20, what we tried to do is we tried to actually adjust the taper of the upper portion of the blade. So on the longer irons, we can tape this upper portion very parallel to the face. That allows more mass to be placed lower to get a little bit higher ball flight. But then when you get into the 8-iron, 9-iron pitching wedge, this angle kicks out more. And what that's going to do is it's going to deliver a higher center of gravity and more penetrating ball flight. So like I said at the very beginning, we wanted the MP-20 set to flow in terms of trajectory as well. So now we can deliver 3 unique trajectories between the muscle back, the MMC, and the HMB to really help you fit them better.
Right. Okay, love that. So let's talk about the layering, and you brought us a little special piece just to show everyone. So this is, I take it, what it looks like prior to plating.
That's right. So this is actually underneath all of these clubs. So we have our mild carbon steel that all of these are made out of, and the chromoly steel and the HMB. After that, we apply a layer of nickel to help the adhesion. And then on top of that layer of nickel is this layer of copper. And what this layer of copper does is it's a very soft material that, I'm trying to think, the easiest way to describe what it does is it essentially almost turns down the volume of impact. It makes it a little bit more muted. You still get the long duration, so a long sound because of the grain flow forging process. And our harmonic impact technology still dials in the frequencies you're hearing, but this just makes it feel ever so slightly softer. If you look at Mizuno in history, if people know the TN87, which was a fantastic club back from 1987, we'd had this type of material underneath. We went away from it for a number of years because we were looking for other ways to address feel. We started to address it with the process, with the developing grain flow forging and grain flow forging HD, and then we started developing our harmonic impact technology to dial in the feel as well. But ultimately, there's something that this copper layer does, even though it's very small and very, very thin on the scale of just a few microns thick. What it does to the impact is unbelievable.
And you guys done some blind testing with players. You went out into the field and you basically gave them, okay, 2 clubs, here's 2 clubs at your spec. Just tell us what you like, hit them both and give us your feedback. And predominantly the players were returning with the feedback that they didn't know it was the one with the copper layer, but they were giving you that feedback that one was the one that they would prefer.
That's right. It's funny to give a little, I don't want to say dirty laundry, but a little inside look back into how we were developing it. It honestly was, let's disprove that copper does anything. That was the approach we took because it's a more expensive process to put this underneath. So what we did is we actually took an MP-18 muscle back, one with and one without copper. We took it out to the tour and got everybody we could to test it. So our whole goal was to be able to say 50-50, some like this one, some like that one. It was tough to describe or tough to discern a difference, but almost to a man, everybody was picking the copper one, even though they didn't even know what they were testing.
That's right,
So that was, and it got to the point where it was, okay, we're trying to disprove this, but there's something here. So it is a more expensive process. It's an extra process when you're plating these golf clubs to put the copper underneath it. But ultimately it's something that, especially when you're talking MP and muscle backs and, the high price golf clubs, something that's gonna add to the feel and it's gonna give you more playability and just more control.
And we're talking about players out there, contracted and non-contracted players, which is interesting as well, that it's just players who are using the product and are currently sort of have a keen feel for what they're using themselves as well, and so you're able to use that as a testing ground for this as an additional layer of performance.
It's one of the funny things, and I guess one of the cool things I'll say about my position and R&D and Mizuno's tour position is when a Mizuno guy walks out with a set of muscle backs, the history is so well known that yes, we have our contract guys, but there's a handful, even more than a handful of other guys who are like, is that the new Mizuno muscle back, who want to try them.
That's right.
So you're right, we do have players, contracted and non-contracted, who are more than willing to give us feedback because there's a legacy and there's a history and there's a pride in how we develop these clubs. And for those players to be able to play a small part in helping us develop it, they're more than willing to help.
I think if you're a true golf equipment junkie, you pay attention to lineage and sort of legacy, like you say, and you know, just to see the input from Legacy and years of knowledge and feedback and input and, you know, developments, it's so nice to see this is just sort of not a culmination, because it will continue to evolve.
Right.
But a culmination of everything you know so far is in this new lineup.
You're exactly right. This has every bit of field technology we've ever developed, ever worked on. So it's the culmination of years, I mean, call it 25 years of development to get to this product. And as Mizuno, a company who tries to always own field, you know, we put our hashtag, nothing feels like a Mizuno, for a reason, because we want to own that feel. Because ultimately, our goal is to deliver as much feedback to the player as possible. We want you to know, if you hit that off the toe, why the ball did what it did. We want you to be able to adjust from that. So while other companies can try to dampen feel or hide feel, we want you to have so much feedback that you know exactly what happened.
You want to expose it.
We want to expose it, exactly right, because that's how you become better. That's how you become a better shot maker. Leave it to us as engineers to make sure the MOI is right, to make sure that the result's going to be right. But if you miss it on a toe and the ball all of a sudden felt fine, but then it went bad, you want to know why. So that's why we try to engineer as much feel and feedback as possible.
Very cool. We can't sort of depart this discussion without a nod to the lefties.
Yes.
So the SEL is the first left-handed blade in a few editions.
It is. So, you know, if there's one group who I had struggled to talk with sometimes, it's the lefties, because I have to explain.
Especially when you come north of the border.
No, you're right about that. Matt over here, he's very kind to me, which is very good of him. But you're right. So I always talk about the greatness of Mizuno blades, and I talk about all cool technologies, and the lefties naturally say, well, why can't I try them? So you're right. We haven't had a left-handed muscle back since the MP-68. So it's been a number of generations. We had the 69, the 4s, the 5s, the 18s, not available for left hand. So what we wanted to try to do this generation is we wanted to try to offer something a little bit different to the lefties, understanding that it is a small percentage of the overall market. So ultimately, when we're talking high development costs, high mold fees, there's always that give and take of financially, can we make it work? So one of the ideas this year was, how can we offer the lefties something a little bit unique? Because when we took a look at the component usage, you know, how many 3 irons we built, how many 4 irons we built, how many 5 irons we built, on a lefty set, obviously the 3 iron number drops even further, the 4 iron's a little bit better than that. So then we started to think of, well, the MP-20 line is designed to be mixed and matched. Let's look at combos. Let's look at what the fitting studios are putting together. How can we take that knowledge and make the best left-handed set? So with the MP-20 SEL, it actually is a pretty cool set because it's a pre-made combo set between the muscle back and the HMB, but they're all labeled SEL, Special Edition Left-Handed. It comes from pitching wedge up to 5 iron in the muscle back and the 3 and the 4 in the HMB. It's going to give you all the feel that you'd expect between these golf clubs, all the performance of the right-handed versions, just in a pre-made combo set.
Very cool. Well, the lefties, I know they'll be delighted to hear that. I mean, we get a lot of comments on the channel, you know, love the product, wish I could test it in lefty. Now they can.
Now they can.
And they've got options. You didn't just release one version of it, so you've kind of thought, how can we sort of best, obviously, capture the whole market and give them something that you think will be a great balance of a set? Well,
and one thing I love to point out about this is to show the level of engineering that went into this set. Typically, we've taken one set, call it the middle one. So you'd expect the MMC to come in left-handed if you were to look at our history. What we wanted to do with this one is we wanted to create the combo set, but then if you look at the actual specs from the fitting world, you'll understand this more than anybody. It's become such a launch monitor battle out there that the fitting clubs, that are the 6 iron or the 7 irons, have gotten so strong that you've started to see loft, what do you call it, loft concentration on the long iron end and big spreads of loft on the short iron end. Because we did this pre-made combo set and because it's its unique left-handed molds, we could engineer the lofts wherever we want.
100%.
It's a muscle back 7 iron, muscle back 6 iron, so we're not trying to play a distance game. So we put them exactly where we wanted them. And what I mean is from the top to the bottom, from the 3 iron down to the pitching wedge, every club is a 1/2 inch difference and 4 degrees difference.
Right, so 22, 26, 30.
That's exactly, and it's what a set should be built like. So, you know, while the specs are a little bit different than the right-handed equivalent, we encourage people to build a right-handed combo set to the SEL specs. I think it's the right thing to do for a lot of people to get your loft right, your gapping right. So it's not just, hey, we just flipped it on CAD and made a lefty version. We engineered this set to be a little bit something different.
That's cool, very cool. Okay, I think let's leave it in there. We're dying to test these, so let's kind of leave the overview there. Hopefully, guys, that's about as deep a sort of dive into the product and the philosophy behind why is I think you'll see really anywhere. And we're just so fortunate that we get to spend time with Chris where we can sort of dive into these things. So we really appreciate you coming up and doing that with us. I know you guys appreciate it as well. So much more than that to come. Okay, so lots of fitting, lots of testing. We've got T20 wedges here with us today, so we've got lots more to do. All right, see you again soon.